What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Arnies. We are three members of Kihi Kwan's PR team looking to add him to every universe, I guess. I'm Matt Johnson, and I recently fell in love with one of my own variants as well.
I'm Keith Baker, and I gotta say, McDonald's looks pretty nice in the 70s.
And I'm Austin Terry, and I would happily ride tandem on a jet ski with Owen Wilson.
I think we all would, or at least we all should. On today's show, of course, we're back to the MCU once again. Who the hell knows how many times it's been. But nevertheless, we are here with one of our favorite MCU shows with Season 2 of Loki over on Disney+. Season 1 surprised us in a really good way back in 2021, and today we'll see how this season stacks up. Let's go ahead and get into this one. Austin and Keith, remind everybody about your thoughts on Season 1, and then give us your non-spoiler thoughts on Loki Season 2.
Yeah, Season 1 of Loki was, I don't want to say like a nice surprise because it had such an all-star cast coming into it, but it was like a great continuation of like that high of highs from how good WandaVision was. So it really was a nice, like, man, we can really do these MCU shows and make them a hit and make them fun and different and spend time with these characters. So I really love Season 1, and it still today remains like one of my favorite MCU shows to kind of come out with the start of this Disney Plus journey. Going into Season 2, I was very excited for it. It did kind of miss me. I had to kind of binge some episodes, but I liked what I saw. I think ultimately I was disappointed by the time the season ended. And I think the main reason of that is I still think the performances are good. I still like the tone and the vibe of the show and all that, but I just couldn't help but feeling like we kind of wasted the show's premise and like really only focused on a singular plotline this season. And by the time everything ended, the only like actually important episode to the season is the finale. So I did kind of feel like we wasted some times with the prior episodes. So still had fun with it, still enjoyed it, but overall I was not as blown away with Season 2 as I was with Season 1. Gotcha.
Yeah, I might be sort of in the same boat. Yeah, really loved Season 1. I remember we were all super excited when we were watching WandaVision. I remember Loki, I was probably the highest on, with WandaVision right behind it. I'm like you, Austin. I think I had a lot of fun with it. I think the first two episodes were a little slow for me. And then once I started getting to episodes 3, 4, and 5, I started really getting into it again. I loved the explanation behind the TVA. Definitely cleared some things up, but I'm kind of with you, Austin. It feels like they did kind of focus a little bit too much on one particular thing that I guess we'll get into. But I did love where the characters went, how they all came together. And I don't know if they're going to do a Season 3 or not. I guess we'll discuss that later on. But yeah, overall, I think it had a pretty decent ending for me, but have some questions for sure. So overall, a good time.
Yeah, I was super high on Season 1 as well. I think, like all of us, we were just like, wow, Disney Plus, off to a good start. And then they've definitely had some missteps, but some highs along the way.
Moon Knight for sure was one of those highs, right?
Oof. Yeah. Oof. I don't want to think about Moon Knight anymore. But yeah, Season 1 of this show is just great. I thought it worked so well. Completely wacky, but in the best way possible. And I was super excited for the season as well. And it sounds like I might be the highest on it. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought it was great. I just appreciated that we got a show that, like Season 1, looking at this as a complete package, it really does spend way more time like with their characters. It feels like we're actually getting interesting arcs for these characters that like started in Season 1. We got some good stuff by the end of that season, but we're watching like multiple characters come really full circle here, and tons of like really beautiful and great writing moments. So I appreciate that the show is different from a lot of the MCU content in that sense. It does feel like a character piece in a lot of ways. I hear what you guys are saying. I guess the idea of like focusing on one singular story just kind of worked for me. I really liked the threat of kind of the Kang variants in the background. I thought they handled that in a really good way. I won't spoil anything yet, but we'll definitely talk about that. Some great new additions to the cast, and I don't know. I by the end, I can see where you guys are coming from. It's still, I guess, I wonder what happened in this show, like how will that affect certain things in the MCU, but I think this show is so good as like a singular focused thing, like on its own, that by the end, I didn't really care where some of these storylines would go in the greater MCU. I was just like, wow, this thing was really great. I just love what they did here. The musical score is also like, I can't really get enough of it. I think it's like kind of stands like pretty head and shoulders above a lot of the MCU stuff. But yeah, I just had a blast with this. I was like thoroughly, it gave me that good feeling week to week where I was like, I can't wait to watch the next one. So yeah, I'm very high on it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, even taking the MCU out of it, and I'm always the one championing like, man, nothing's really connected anymore. But with this show specifically, with its premise, like I thought this one actually was almost too focused on the MCU because they kind of set up with the background of time and everything. Like this show could go anywhere, do anything, and do interesting like stories week to week. And instead, we kind of got rid of that premise and really focused on just Kang and how that's going to impact everything else. So I think that actually did let me down. I will say, just as like a broader zoom out, I guess, on the state of the MCU, I was kind of laughing to myself how last time we talked about this show on the podcast, we were all like, wow, we're kicking off the multiverse. This is going to be so interesting to see where this new phase goes. And we're on season 2, 2 years later. Nothing's happened with the multiverse in the broader MCU. So
yeah, it's annoying.
I guess that's the only point of this show is to tell us what the multiverse is.
Spider-Man No Way Home had all that multiverse stuff happening. Doctor Strange had a sequel with multiverse in the title. It's like, yeah, but why is this stuff happening? Is it because of Loki? Like the end of that first season? Like you still haven't told us. And by this season, I still don't know. So it's yeah, just the connectivity is very odd and kind of, I'm with you, kind of comical. We'll see where it goes, I guess. But with that, everybody, if you have not watched Loki season 2 yet, or if you're in the middle of watching it and still trying to finish it, we're going to do the rest of this conversation will be spoilers. So finish it up and then come on back to listen to the rest of our conversation. All right, everybody, welcome to Spoiler Territory. Before we get into our kind of roundtable freeform discussion, let's do some cast, crew, and critical reception talk. So the showrunner for this season is Eric Martin, who's a writer mostly known for writing a couple episodes of season 1 of Loki. So Michael Waldron was kind of credited as the creator and I guess the main writer and driving force creatively of season 1, but it has been reported that Waldron left like midway through production of season 1 because he had to go write Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. So when that happened, Martin reportedly kind of picked up the slack when it came to the writing duties for the rest of that season, but he didn't really receive a lot of credit. It seems like kind of a make good, as they were like, hey, you did a great job in picking up the slack on season 1. How about you come into season 2, kind of be the main showrunner? And he also ended up writing every episode. So guys, I was a little nervous because these episodes were mostly directed by the duo, Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead. They did 4 out of the 6 episodes, and then Dan DeLue and Kasra Farahani did the rest of them. And the reason I was scared, guys, we mentioned it earlier, but Benson and Moorhead directed a couple episodes of Moon Knight previously.
Your favorite one.
They truly shit the bed. But then, speaking of make goods, they came back in here, and I think they did a great job. Their next project, interestingly, is Daredevil Born Again, which just went through another creative overhaul. They're kind of being brought in to direct a bunch of those. And then Dario Scartapane, who was the writer on Netflix's The Punisher, will be the new showrunner for that. So we're going to be seeing more Benson and Moorhead going forward. And then, of course, the music that I mentioned in non-spoiler, done by Natalie Holt, returning from season 1. And she just, I think, kills it every time.
All right, going to our cast, we have Tom Hiddleston as Loki, Sophia DiMartino as Sylvie, Ki-hee Kwan as O.B., Gugu Mbatha-Raw as Ravonna Renslayer, Wunmi Mosaku as Hunter B-15, Eugene Cordero as Casey, Raphael Cassell as Hunter X5, also aka Brad Wolf, Jonathan Majors as Victor Timely and He Who Remains, and we got Tara Strong as Miss Minutes, and Owen Wilson as Mobius. All right, guys, there's our casting crew. Any positives, any negatives? What do we got?
I'll just say I thought Jonathan Majors was very good as Victor Timely and He Who Remains in the show.
How dare you?
It's worth noting this was filmed in 2022, so before his arrest. So anything that we see with Jonathan Majors was already planned. I am really curious to see how, with the way the show ended, is going to impact if he gets to carry through. So I'll just call it out. I thought he was really good. And then I think my main surprise for this season was Ki-hee Kwan. Loved him as OB. Every time he was on screen, he was so much fun, so charming, and yeah, he was a really nice surprise to find him in this season.
Yeah, Ki-hee Kwan, man, he's so good. He's awesome. I'm glad to see he's doing a lot more acting now. But yeah, I hope his career just keeps on going and he keeps acting, because whatever he's doing, he's good in everything. And I think he really fits this role as OB, as the techie guy, scientist, author, whatever you want to call him. He played it awesome. He's super funny too.
Yeah, I guess I'll go ahead and I already mentioned Natalie Holt, of course, behind the scenes, but Tom Hiddleston, I just think, obviously he gets a lot of credit for playing Loki. I think the writers also did a great job of, like I mentioned earlier, just giving him what feels like a full circle character arc going all the way back to the first Thor movie. And he's just a great lead. He's super compelling to watch throughout all 6 episodes. My little surprise is I'm a big fan of Raphael Casal. I like him from Blind Spotting and some other things. He's just a really fun actor and kind of artist, and he played X5 originally, and then who embraces his actor life as Brad Wolf. And I just thought he was funny at times. He was kind of scary at times, but I thought that was like a fun little side character that we got to spend.
Oh, I hated this character.
Really?
I couldn't stand it.
Oh.
Like a fourth of the way through the show, I was like, man, who would have thought the big villain of Loki season 2 would be Brad? I was so
Brad.
uninterested in any of this.
Hi, I'm Brad.
I didn't think he was bad. I just was like, why are we still spending time with this character? And then another like big negative for me is I thought the most wasted character of the season was Sylvie. She was so great and interested in season 1, and like most of season 2, she's just at a McDonald's. I was like, what the hell's happening here? How are we not doing anything with this character?
Pretty disappointing. I have a strong feeling that we'll see more of this character in the future, not necessarily in more of like a Loki show, but just elsewhere. So that could be exciting. But yeah, I think that was probably my biggest disappointment when it came was the handling of that character. So when it comes to critical reception, you know what the three of us thought, but what is everyone else saying? Loki Season 2 has received positive reviews. It has an 82% on Rotten Tomatoes. For reference, Season 1 is currently sitting at a 92%. Besides, critical consensus for this season is Loki's dizzying, dazzling second season may rely on sleight of hand to distract from its slightly less satisfying storyline, but the end result still contains enough of that old Marvel magic to entertain. The cast, production design, score, and second half of the season received universal praise, but some felt the season got off to a slow start and initially felt like it was just setting up future Marvel projects instead of focusing on its own story. Sounds kind of interesting to note those negatives, it sounds, because you guys have mentioned those as well, so maybe we're in line with these people here.
Yeah, I think I'm right in line, because throughout the first half, I was like, this is so much fun, I'm laughing, and then like as I was thinking about it, it was like, well, nothing's really happening in this season.
Yeah.
So I do kind of agree with that sleight of hand point. I thought they nailed the finale, though, so that did kind of wash that bad taste out of my mouth.
Yeah, I would say the same.
I agree. I thought the finale in particular was really great. But I agree. Even though I like the show, I think the most out of the three of us, I think those initial episodes, I was like, okay, so are we going anywhere with this? So I'm glad it picked up, but definitely a slow start.
Some might say as soon as Brad exited the picture, the show got better.
Wow, interesting.
Hey, Brad.
I'm Brad. All right. Well, with that, it is time to go a little bit deeper. So let's get into our freeform discussion, the main part of our show where each of us just kind of writes down some random points or things that we want to focus, spend a little bit more time on, and we'll just kind of break it all down. So guys, where should we start today?
Yeah, so I touched on this in the non-spoiler section, and I'll pose it now that we're in spoiler section again, but I have seen this kind of going around online too, and I think it's an interesting conversation piece, but the show really could have been like the Doctor Who of the Marvel Universe. We could have gone anywhere, done anything, any time frame. They set that up a little bit in season 1. We went to different timelines more. We went to different planets more, different universes more. Season 2 really was singularly focused on branching timelines. We only went to Earth. And then we had to like tie everything back to Kang at the end. So do you think this show kind of lost its premise in favor of trying to be that kind of connecting guideline throughout the MCU in this new phase?
I didn't know what it was trying to do. It got lost for me between season 1 and this season. Because I knew Kang was supposed to be, yeah, like you said, Austin, the connecting factor. But I wasn't sure what they're trying to do with the TVA. And also Ravonna Renslayer, her character, her motivations kind of got lost for me. I forgot what she was even trying to do.
Well, she just believed in the TVA's mission. So she needed it. She was willing to do whatever she had to do to keep the sacred timeline safe.
But and then that got confusing to me too. It's like what's the difference between the sacred timeline and all the other timelines?
I hear you. I kind of agree with that point too. I found it a little bit funny whenever they would throw up on the screen like 1970, and then it would say branch timeline, and then later in the show go 1883 sacred timeline. I was like, what really is the difference between these? It's kind of it does get lost. Same. Yeah. So when it comes to like an enjoyment factor, I think I was just able to kind of toss it out of my brain. I just didn't really think about it. But when you do, and you kind of review it, and it's like, well, that is weird. So I'm totally with you. I was left a little bit lost. I didn't watch a recap. I kind of just was like, I'll just dive back in and see what happens. And it took me a little while to kind of get my footing. I eventually did. But in terms of your question, Austin, I kind of see both sides. Loki definitely, it seemed like they took like direct inspiration from something like Doctor Who. And it was like, okay, so is this going to have its own narrative, or is it going to be kind of more of a week-to-week type deal? And I thought season 1 balanced that a little bit. And now that I'm kind of remembering our review, I feel like I remember being super high on the season 1 finale, which, if you remember, is basically like they go to the end of time, they meet this He Who Remains, who apparently made the TVA, and the entire episode is just kind of them like talking back and forth. I remember being super high on that because I was like, wow, that's going to be so cool and what that's going to set up. And I feel like maybe you guys were like, I thought it was kind of boring, and like I didn't love that like we had this kind of fun, wacky season and then we ended up here. And now it's kind of interesting being in season 2, and they're really taking that season 1 finale and really kind of running with it for the entirety of this season. You're right. This one is much less about kind of jumping around different timelines, universes, whatever you want to call it. And really, it's like in episode 1, they establish, hey, what happened in the season 1 finale happened. This temporal loom thing is fucked up. And it takes all 6 episodes to kind of resolve the loom issue. Yeah, you're right. It is way more of a focused thing. That kind of hanging threat of Kang or He Who Remains, and I guess the MCU, to your point, is definitely in the background. I think it just comes down to preference. Like, I ended up not minding it, but I totally wouldn't begrudge someone that was like, I kind of miss I missed Loki season 1 when it kind of was more like a wacky, fun thing. It didn't seem like they were caring too much about like the MCU at large. It kind of felt like, oh, this is going to be a show where Tom Hiddleston and Owen Wilson just, are goofy in different timelines together. And I that works. I guess I just kind of preferred this, but but while I was watching it, I wasn't really thinking about the MCU, if that makes sense. So it's like, I guess maybe that's why I'm the highest on it, because like I appreciated the more focused story, but it also at the same time I wasn't watching it like, man, this is like too focused on the MCU like maybe you were. So I guess like, different strokes for different folks, but it worked for me. But I understand what you're saying, kind of like the whole Doctor Who episodic element.
I think what I'm getting at is it does seem like this is likely the series finale for this show. I haven't seen anything about season 3 coming back. So as we get like further down the road, I might look back on this show and be like, man, that could have ran for like 4 seasons and been a really fun time-hopping adventure, but instead we just did this one singular story around Kang.
And I'm kind of with Matt on this. Like, I just wasn't thinking about it too hard. I was just kind of going with it because it was just fun jumping through all the timelines. I wasn't even paying attention whether it was the branch timeline or the sacred timeline. Yeah, it was more of just a fun ride. Trying to pay attention to how the TVA works and the timelines was just too much to handle. So we already touched on Sylvie's character kind of being a letdown for us. She's working at McDonald's in 1973 or 4 or something like that. So what do you think happened, like where she changed her mindset on like everything and was like, I'm just gonna live this. I like this life. I'm gonna live this life. I'm not gonna be a god anymore.
I see what they were trying to do, and I think the premise of the character this season worked totally fine. It was just the amount that she was used later on and kind of the handling of that is what bothered me. But, I mean, the idea that this is a variant of Loki that doesn't really... She was like a child that was brought like out of their timeline, and the entire timeline was destroyed for some reason. I can't remember why, but she's kind of grown up only knowing kind of these apocalypses that she mentions. Like, she's watched the TVA destroy all these timelines and these billions and trillions of lives for seemingly no reason. So her whole thing, whenever she met He Who Remains, it was like, I'm going to kill this guy because he's caused so much pain and like just murdered like all these people. He's responsible in her eyes. That's why she kills him. So the idea of her killing him and then after that being like, well, I guess I succeeded in my mission. I'm going to kind of, find a life to live, I suppose.
It's like Thanos leaving to become a farmer.
Right. That's kind of what I was thinking of too. And whenever Thanos, destroys half of life and then just literally, like you said, becomes a farmer. He's like, I guess I did it. I guess I'll go figure out what to do now. And I just thought it was kind of comical in a good way that Sylvie just walks out one of those time doors and she just happens to be near a McDonald's and she's like, oh, I guess this is what people do, right? Okay, I'll do that. So that just becomes her life. So I'm cool with that as a premise. I like that. But it was just everything after that. Like the way she kind of just popped in and out of the season. It didn't even really seem like she and Loki were that connected anymore after being so connected in season 1. Maybe they were trying to move back from the romance angle, which is fine. But the way she kind of popped in and out and didn't really have anything interesting to do or say was what disappointed me. The idea of her killing He Who Remains and then just okay, I'm going to go kind of try and create my own life. I was fine with that. It was just everything after.
I was getting frustrated with her refusing to listen to Loki too. There's a lot of this season where she just pops in, kind of messes up their plans, tells Loki he's only seeking a throne, and then jumps away. And it's like, can you just listen to what he has to say? I was getting really frustrated with that too.
Yeah, I usually don't really think about that stuff too much. In season 1, it made total sense how they were kind of on opposing like kind of viewpoints at times. But here it's like, okay, Loki's trying to tell you that he's fine that you killed He Who Remains. Like, he disagreed with it, but he's fine with that. Like, do what you have to do. But now timelines in the world is worse off, so I'm asking for your help. And she's like, what are you talking about? It's like,
and
well,
it's
no.
also your fault that this is happening, so maybe do something to
But
fix
he's even being nice about it. He's like, I agree with I'm okay with what you did, but there are consequences, and that's why I'm here. I'm trying to fix those consequences. Like, it seems like you like this life you have. Good for you, but it's going to be over because of what's happening. Can you help me? And she's like, I don't know. Can I get a quarter pounder?
Well, and I was even more like banging my head against the wall, because they would have that conversation, and then her response was usually, but this is the price for free will. As the world's like disintegrating around her, and it's like, all these people you like here are dying. Are you going to do anything about it or no?
Yeah, the whole like kind of free will conversation was, I thought, really well handled in season 1. Here, still good, especially by the finale in particular, but it definitely was lost in the beginning. It's like, what are we talking about?
Sometimes it's like when you like start a sequel video game and you have to learn everything and do the same skill tree over. That's how this kind of felt to me, where it's like, we've already seen them grow to like each other in season 1, and we're starting over, it felt like, in season 2 with their relationship.
Yeah, I saw someone online say it, and it kind of put words to exactly how I felt. And I kind of already alluded to it, but it felt like maybe the writers this season didn't like the choice to make them romantically involved in season 1. So then in this season, they just didn't make them romantically involved, which is fine, but there was no smooth transition. It's just like, oh, they're just not at all close anymore.
I know, but that chemistry was dynamite in season 1.
It was pretty hot, and it was weird. All the characters called it out. They were like, those are 2 Lokis. Like,
Yeah.
The only person Loki has ever fallen for is himself.
That was so interesting to me too, though. It's like, of course Loki would fall in love with himself.
Yeah.
Yeah, very strange. So yeah, it's unfortunate. I think the Sylvie character is probably the biggest disappointment. Like, it sounds like we all agree. But it does sound like one of our highest points, who we also get introduced right off the bat. Like I said, in episode 1, the first months, they're like, hey, remember what happened in the finale? The loom's broken. We're like, what the fuck's the loom? I think they help ease us into the main storyline by introducing us to OB right off the bat. What'd you guys think of this character? Just a thrill, just a blast, just a fun little guy.
So much fun. My favorite was the reveal that OB and Timely were like writing to each other, and that circular like chicken and egg conversation with the TVA was really fun to me.
Yeah, I think probably like when it came to like the time just element, I think I'm with you. I think the most interesting thing was the chicken and egg reveal that it's like, I guess Victor Timely is kind of responsible for inadvertently creating the TVA, but he's only responsible for that because Ravonna Renslayer stole a book that was written by OB and dropped it into his house when he was a kid. But OB only wrote that book because in OB's life in the TVA, he meets Victor Timely. Like, it was like, whoa, is it like totally like just like wacky, and I loved it.
What did you guys think of seeing everybody else's variant lives? You get Hunter B-15 as a nurse, you get Owen Wilson as a jet ski salesman, and I guess kind of a failed father. And then you get, Sylvie, of course, trying to live her life in McDonald's.
And also, I don't think, I like Eugene Cordero's Casey quite a bit. He was in season 1. I don't think there's a whole lot to say about that character in season 2, but I did think it was really awesome that like the reveal was his real self is one of like the Alcatraz 3. It's one of my favorite, like weird, like real life stories where like those 3 guys escaped from Alcatraz, but then they never found like their remains or anything. So it's like, so did they make it across the bay and like make it to safety? Did they not? And the show plays with that. It's like, well, they didn't make it because Loki pulled him into the TVA. Yeah, I love this stuff. It was really cool to see like Mobius in season 1, and they really carried it over the storyline well here. Just the element that like, he's just like totally not interested in learning about his life, but maybe that's not even the right term. He's just like out of sight, out of mind, which I think he even says something like that in the finale. It's like, I don't want to know what I was up to. And so kind of like showing us the variant lives I thought was interesting for the TVA. I also thought it was kind of sad because Loki, I think it was like episode 4 or 5, whichever one it is, where he has to like unite all of their real lives to, to fix the issue. Like it was sad that like he had to kind of like take them all away from their lives. And then it kind of, that goes full circle in the finale. But
did you guys think with him taking everybody from their lives, we were going to get to a point where it's revealed like that Loki inadvertently created the TVA and was the first person to poach people from their timelines?
Yeah. I thought that's where they were going, which I guess in a way they kind of did. I mean, by the end of the finale, he didn't want to, but he ends up on the throne of He Who Remains, and he's holding all these things together. So I guess in a way, you could say, since the TVA like exists out of time, that he did kind of create it. Like, I don't know. I thought it was also interesting that the farm or whatever it was, like I already forgot, like the barn or shed, like whatever room it is that like OB's real life self has in the real world, like it looks exactly like his workshop in the TVA.
Yeah.
I was like, huh, that's kind of interesting. So I thought that was a fun, I don't know, like fun way for the actors and actresses to kind of like flex their muscles and play different characters, but it was also cool to see their real selves, I thought.
Let's spend a good amount of time on the finale, because they do a lot in this finale. Like, Loki goes back to the end of season 1, has a lot of conversations with Kang. He then spends, it seems like centuries, trying to stop the temporal loom from malfunctioning, and then does, of course, end up taking the throne, and in a really sweet reveal, ends up creating the world tree, which I thought was awesome from like Norse mythology. So anything stand out here?
Yeah, I did like all the scenes with him going over and over again, trying to fix a temporal loom with Victor Timely, and like him hurrying him up every time. To touch on him real quick, I really liked the character of Victor Timely. I thought Jonathan Majors played this 1890s variant really well. It was really cool.
Yeah, and I like that he never like broke bad. I kept expecting for him to break away, but it was fun to actually see a Kang variant like invested in this mission and trying to do, as he says, like time to be brave and trying to help them out.
Yeah, he was just a very endearing character. And I think making him a con man was a good choice, because it always made us feel like, oh, he's starting out as a con man, but he could get worse. But then just the reveal, no, like he was a con man for, I guess, maybe monetary reasons or whatever, but he never was like a terrible person. So I like that too. And like that initial reveal, whenever he walks outside the first time and just dies, I was like, oh, is that it? And that kind of ends up being it, because we see him in the next episodes, but his life always ends in that moment whenever he walks outside and just like explodes. It was like, okay, that was a fun surprise. But yeah, speaking about the finale, I also just love, I'm a sucker for that Groundhog Day type shit. I just love, seeing characters like getting kind of fed up with having to go through the motions. And you're right, Keith, like watching Loki kind of trying to speed up the conversations that we've already seen was super fun. But yeah, there was some amazing editing and some great cuts to kind of break up that comedy. I loved, we talked like negatively about Sylvie, but I liked whenever they cut back to that moment in real life OB's like workshop where everybody's already died and Loki gets to have like kind of one final conversation with Sylvie, in which it gives him that realization that like, oh, I need to go out. Like, you're right, Sylvie, we can destroy things, but only if there's a chance to replace it with something better, which is what he does. And I love that scene. I really love that scene where he goes back to talking with Mobius for the first time in season 1, where he kind of like time slips back and they get to have one final conversation. Was really sweet and endearing, and like their friendship is always funny, but it is like genuine too. So like that was a great kind of emotional farewell. So yeah, like the way they broke up kind of those like funny bits with like some great little send-offs, I thought was also like super fun to see, and it really added to kind of that final like oomph of whenever Loki walks outside and like his clothes are disintegrated and his god form comes back, the horns grow, and then he just, does what he does. And I'm with you, Austin. Like the reveal of the world tree was cool, because since the TVA exists out of time, it's like whenever in like Thor 1 they're talking about the world tree, it's like this is what they're talking about, because what Loki did exists out of time. So like in the real Norse mythology, whenever they're talking about the world tree, it's because Loki created it, which is like kind of weird and wacky to think about. But I also like I got a little misty, I gotta say, whenever Loki, because you guys know I'm a pretty big fan of the first Thor, unlike a lot of people. But whenever like kind of Loki walks down and closes that door, and like Sylvie and Mobius are freaking out, and he like kind of has that nice little like kind of sad smile when he's like, I know what god I need to be for you, for all of them, which was also his last line in the first Thor movie before like presumably killing himself. Like he tells Odin like, I did this for you, for all of them. But like at that point in his life he was wrong, but here it's like a great full circle moment. So yeah, I just love the finale in general, like so many great moments.
I love the character arc moment for Loki as an MCU character too, of we have seen this character so many times try and take the throne for the wrong reasons, and the one time he's actively not seeking the throne, he ends up on the throne. I thought that was really interesting and fun too.
Yeah. I was thinking about that, like, throughout watching this. I was like, how far this character has come from the first
And this
Avengers.
isn't even the character that we've seen have some of these arcs, because this is the version of Loki that cut out before the Loki in the standard MCU, we knew like grew and became a character we all loved and became a hero that way too.
Yes. Yeah. Which, yeah, that gets confusing too. But yeah.
Yeah. But it's kind of sweet
no.
too, because it's like, I guess if like Loki is proven to be a character where if like he's given the right situation and enough time, he is like always destined to be a hero. But like, you know, so some of that stuff was fun.
So let's get into the Jonathan Majors of it all. This season was actually filmed in 2022 before the actor was arrested for a domestic dispute in 2023. Marvel has been in the news a lot. Like, there's a lot of speculation of what's Marvel going to do with Jonathan Majors pending his legal issues. Does he get replaced? Does he carry on? I do find it interesting that this season was filmed before all of that, and it does kind of give Marvel an out from Jonathan Majors if they want to. So, any thoughts there?
Yeah, I kind of thought the same thing. I was surprised when it ended because I was like, wow, this is actually could be a clean break. We don't necessarily have to go back to Kang. They did have some lines at the very end, kind of in the epilogue, where they reference Ant-Man and the Wasp. Like, I think Mobius is like, oh, Earth 616, there was one, but they took care of it. Because they do say in this epilogue that now the TVA's mission is to prune specifically He Who Remains variants. So they are still out there and gathering.
And He Who Remains even says, if you let me live, we prevent it. But if I die, the multiverse war is coming.
Right. So it sounds like they could still be building to it. I just don't understand why they don't recast him. I mean, he's a great actor, don't get me wrong. But if you want to do the Kang story, there's other great actors too.
Yeah.
And this is literally a character like that has multiple versions of himself. So you could even make like a stupid joke. It's like, oh, this one looks a little bit different. It's like, recast, who cares?
Yeah. Audiences aren't stupid. They can roll with it if you'd still give a compelling actor and a compelling story.
Do you guys recall Terrence Howard and my friend Don Cheadle, anyone?
Tony.
Excuse me, how about Mark Ruffalo and Edward Norton?
Ugh.
Ooh.
Wow. Remember?
I guess let's phrase it this way then. Let's even remove Jonathan Majors from the conversation. Are you guys interested in the Kang character enough to want to see this character continue as the big bad?
So I am definitely. I guess that's why maybe I'm advocating for a recast because it's funny we're talking about Victor Time. Like, wow, what an endearing! It's so cool to see a version of Kang that seems like a pretty decent guy. But we were also saying that in season 1 when we talked about that. We were like, wow, this He Who Remains guy. I guess he's talking about all his worst versions are coming in if you kill him. But this guy, he's a pretty good guy. He's holding time together. That one scene where in the finale Loki goes back to talk to him, it's just through like some back and forth fun dialogue and great acting from both of them, it's revealed, oh, He Remains might be the most sadistic version of all of them.
Yeah.
That line where he tells Loki, everything that you've done this season, like I knew Sylvie would kill me. I've paved the road for you to do this. And Loki's like, fuck. I didn't know that you were still in charge of what I was doing.
Every time he said like reincarnation, baby, I was like, God, you're so scary.
Yeah.
Stop saying it.
But it's also compelling, and the reason I want to see more of him is because we also get like the flip around moment and seeing a Kang that was maybe not scared, but caught off guard whenever Loki reveals, oh, I do have the power to pause time. He does it and just like kind of points at him and is like, what do you makes you think that this is the first time we've had this part of the conversation?
Mm-hmm.
So it's fun to see a character that was just like, there's so many versions of themselves out there. Some of them, like Victor Timely, are pretty good. There's some that are really bad, like an Ant-Man, and there's some that are like potentially even worse, like He Who Remains. It's like, I want to see what else they could do with these characters. And that would be the perfect like setup for an Avengers movie. So that's why I'm just like, just recast him. I love this character. I want to see more.
Yeah, I'm with you. I find this character so interesting. And I think the thing that is potentially more compelling about Kang versus Thanos is because of the multiverse story, because of the multiple versions, it leaves room for each like key Avenger to have a moment with Kang on their own. And then when they come together as a team, it's almost like a personal villain for each one of them. I know Thanos had those moments too, but it just seems like there's the potential to do more of that with Kang as like the overarching big bad for the MCU.
And I was also thinking, like, is this it for Loki? Does he have to stay there that whole time at the tree and hold everything together?
Yeah.
Or
I gotta think at some point this version's gonna have a moment with Thor at somewhere just to really close the gap, because I don't know how they would do it, but I gotta imagine either in a big Avengers movie, somehow this version of Loki is gonna come out with the TVA and then reveal himself to Thor too.
Yeah, I think you're due for like one more big Loki scene in one of these upcoming Avengers movies, whether it be Kang Dynasty or the one after it, Secret Wars, because I know those are tied together. But then after that, I wouldn't be surprised if you don't see Tom Hiddleston ever again come back to the character. I think this is the perfect send-off, but I am with Austin, like, I mean, I'll give you 3 things that I think write it down or guaranteed. You're going to get, like Austin mentioned, like there's tons of room for like great character interactions with Kang. Obviously, you're going to have Ant-Man probably have some good ones because he has personal experience. But you already know what Kang's going to say to Thor, so that's one of them. There's going to be a personal thing there. I think there's going to be some really fun potential dynamics between our Thor, Chris Hemsworth, and Sophia DiMartino's Sylvie, who is also a Loki. So mark that down. That's also going to happen. And then the third one is also like I said, I think you're going to have like one big heroic moment of this version of Loki coming in. You get Thor and he reuniting, and then we probably don't see Tom Hiddleston after that. Maybe not Chris Hemsworth. I feel like he's kind of maybe getting ready to get out of there as well, but not before one more brothers moment. I'm totally with you there. I think that's going to happen. But I guess that kind of like brings up the point. I mean, are you guys kind of on the same page? I think we'll get those scenes, and we're going to see more of the TVA of the MCU. We're going to see more Sylvie. I think we're definitely going to see more Mobius, but I definitely don't think we're getting a Loki season 3. Like I would be genuinely shocked if they just randomly announced, hey, we're doing another season with all our cast coming back. I feel like that would be really weird.
I don't know how they would do it. Would he come down from the tree and be a main character again?
Yeah, that's why I can't really see it. Yeah. I bet with Deadpool 3 next year, you'll get some TVA stuff. So it feels like that story is also going to be
that's a good point.
Like everything.
I mean, but this is the exact same conversation we had at the end of season 1, where we were
you're right.
projecting like, oh, where do we think we'll see the TVAs pop up next? Could it be this movie? And the answer was never. It's only in the show.
That's true. That is true. Maybe I shouldn't get my hopes up, but it would be fun to see Owen Wilson just reacting to Deadpool. So I'll keep my fingers crossed, but you are right, Austin. With the current state post-Endgame Marvel, we just have to be careful with our expectations. All right, guys. Well, that is our Loki Season 2 discussion. That was a fun one. Before we close out here, let's do some Arnie's Podcast Awards, the part of our show where we take something from the project we just talked about and we award something. Could be for something positive, negative, or something in between, guys. What do you think deserves an award today?
Yeah, I'm going to give the Poor Sleeping Choice Award. Renslayer. Why are you sleeping in a boat that's dangling off of a ship? It's just too easy to get rid of you. That was a terrible decision.
That was a choice, yeah. I mean, like, Miss Minutes was also scary. Did not have to do much to make that happen. It's just like, don't sleep in a boat like that, you freak.
It was a cool shot, though, because I think they cut to black, and then it's a top-down view of the ship, of the boat falling off the ship. I was like, oh, shit, I guess, bye, Renslayer.
Yeah.
She also rode really fast, because like 5 minutes later, she caught up to them. So
I know. She's... A lot of strength there. A lot of strength. You see what I'm saying, Kang? Not only a potential villain, but, she has that upper body strength that you could utilize.
I'm going to give the...
Are you going to give the Horny AI Award to Miss Minutes?
Oh, yeah, she was something. I'm going to give the Best Sweets Award to the TVA. They had some pretty good looking pie there. And they also had a nice hot cocoa machine. I was really wanting a cup of that hot cocoa whenever Mr. Timely went to go get it, and unfortunately gave it to a man that got pruned as he was handing it to him. I
don't know why. I thought with the whole pie conversation, we were heading to a reveal where Owen Wilson gets to try key lime pie outside of the TVA and then realizes the TVA has been serving him bad pie all along.
Oh, that would have been really funny.
That'd been good.
That would have been good. Well, you bring up Mobius there, and it ties into my award. And my award is for I'm Scared of These Children, and it goes to real-life Mobius, a.k.a. Don's 2 kids. You referenced him as a potential failed father earlier, but I think maybe he's on the right track. I don't like these kids. They're running around. They're, talking about snakes. And like, what?
They're trying to burn the house down.
I don't think he was a failed father. I think he was a struggling father. Those kids just sounded like...
That's a good word.
Maybe a failed husband.
Oh, so there you go.
Maybe. So, Austin, you're mentioning maybe in that last scene, you could have had Owen Wilson with a plate of pie as he looks on, enjoying that and realizes the TVA had bad pie. But maybe after that, you could also have that shot where he sees the 2 kids run out and he sees what they're doing. And then he goes, you know what? Actually, I'm going to go back and work at the TVA.
Yeah, if I was Mobius and I was looking in on that life where at best you're selling jet skis and then coming home to your kids trying to burn your house down, I'd be like, absolutely not. Take me back to the TVA.
No thanks. Well, with that, everybody, thank you all so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you hit that follow button so you never miss our upcoming content. Also, if you wouldn't mind sharing us with a friend, we would appreciate that to continue to grow our show. Please leave us reviews as well. Even if you don't want to write anything, leaving us a 5-star review over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts really does help us out. At the Arnies is our social, and the Arnies.media is the website. We'll be back next Tuesday with another episode.
And last week, Matt and I covered the premiere of Invincible Season 2. So if you want to hear us talk about that fantastic show over on Amazon Prime, be sure to go check that episode out.
And lastly, we want to hear from you, so please send us a message on Instagram at the Arnies or email us thearniesmedia@gmail.com. What'd you think of Loki Season 2? Would you buy a jet ski from a rundown Owen Wilson? Anything you say we'll read on the show and react to it live on our latest episode.
So with that, we hope you enjoyed this episode. We'll see you next week. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.
Wow.